Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we're back to the minigame podcast today for Monday, June 16th. Starting later than I thought I might, because I was wrapping up actually playing a pretty mixed reviewed, and I would definitely give it less than mixed reviews, hidden object game called Amulet of Dreams, which expectations are not particularly high on hidden object games in the first place. We will be scrolling down the SteamDB 24-hour peak concurrent list here as we start to warm up. We'll have about maybe an hour of warm up, if that much, and then we'll jump into video game news. There really isn't a ton to say. Over the weekend, my big project was getting rid of a 10-year-old mattress, which I'm not sure if I mentioned this before publicly, but I took the cover off my 10-year-old mattress to look at it, which was all foam. And yeah, there was a lot more degradation and damage to it than I thought there would be. It's kind of no surprise that I was waking up with pain in my ribs as a side sleeper because of just how much it had just started to kind of crumble, fall apart. The general chemical consistency, I think, is just degrading. Now, all mattresses go bad, and so inherently getting sold on a $3,000 mattress is really getting sold on potentially replacing a $3,000 mattress with another one every 7 to 10 years. So I got a $300 hybrid mattress this time, which was heavier in the box and heavier than the foam mattress overall, but it wasn't too much of a hassle to move it from the floor location lying on a clean carpet for 3 days to fully fluff up and unshrink itself from being a mattress in a box, which I would assume every single mattress nowadays is shipped in boxes now, and that there are no 18-wheeler trucks with fully inflated, fully spring decked out mattresses. There may be some bed frames like that, but or box springs, but I bet you don't even get that anymore. I bet you probably have a hard time even finding box springs, which also eliminates the need for specialty mattress stores, which, as things become more and more efficient, inherently it points out that if there was just a way and a will in the United States in particular to nationalize Walmart and their highly advanced delivery infrastructure, and nationalize Amazon.com and their highly advanced delivery structure, and just make that a government agency of delivering components from point A to point B, the Department of Shipping and Trade or something. Probably you'd put it under something like the post office even. You wouldn't need too many stores in the first place. You could just have everything delivered directly to people's houses. But yeah, I got the new mattress. I bought a vacuum bag, and I was hoping to save that vacuum bag, but honestly the vacuum bag for the old mattress wasn't even that good. Like, the mattress I had, which was a 10-inch foam mattress, didn't fit in it. It really was more of a kind of a ripoff in that it was designed to barely hold a queen size mattress that probably had somewhere closer to 5 inches of foam, I would guess. But yeah, so I just folded part of the mattress up and was then able to vacuum it flat, which made it slightly easier to maneuver. And for $20, I'm just gonna straight up throw away the mattress in the bag and hope that my garbage people we'll take it in that fashion. The vacuum aspect has already loosened and weakened, and it has inflated back up in the bag. So, you know, I have it on a hand cart or a truck or whatever you would call it, ready to throw away for garbage day. I thought maybe I'd cut up the foam and use it for something, but frankly the foam is probably not viable for anything, really. That it would just either degrade or contaminate things more, and it wouldn't really make good pillow stuffing or something like that. It just kind of, I think, is going to crumble and degrade faster and faster. As for my new mattress, it's firm to start with. That seems to be the way you really want things to go, and then it will perhaps even get a bit firmer over the next 90 days. But then I think eventually it starts to kind of settle in, because it is a hybrid mattress which has a lot of box springs, or no, not box springs, but springs in it. There is perhaps a lot more pushback there, less sinking in and just cushioning you like an egg in a nest, which I kind of enjoy that feeling. I know some people don't, but overall I think I might do better with having some firmness. Now what's weird about this mattress is that the way I got it on my bed frame has put it a couple of inches further away from where the edge, and I needed those inches apparently, because my bed is directly to the right of the chair I sit in when I stream, and I often put my keyboard on the bed, and now I actually can't reach it because it's just a couple inches further. So that was the big boring project for the weekend that took up a lot of time, on top of you know, cleaning, trying to declutter maybe a little bit, but probably not even accomplishing much there. Getting groceries, and I'm sure a couple other things. Also still just playing a ton on my phone, lots of Sudoku, lots of Memento Mori, well, lots of Magical Modica, really, and even maybe a little bit of Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG Pocket. You can see Stellar Blade is still in a high number here, as far as the top 10 goes, as far as people playing it. 170,000 people in the last 24 hours, which that's not super surprising. I don't think there'd be a lot of people that would jump into Stellar Blade on PC and then not want to see it through for a while. It would be always interesting, certainly, if there was a significantly high number of people that made it to the credits, or a significantly low number of people that would make it to the credits, but you'd almost have to give it 30 days or so before you could even begin to think you're getting a good sampling there. Because yeah, I could see people taking their time and playing the game for a while. I know I think it was PC Gamer put out a headline that was clearly just a troll bait headline, calling Stellar Blade a gooner game, and that all the players will never see the light of heaven. Something just really ridiculous troll bait headline nonsense, which probably worked to get Reddit's attention, which is where I saw it for a small amount of time. But yeah, that is weirdly the only article I have seen about Stellar Blade on PC's release, which I suppose I could call out DF Retro, in that DF Retro doesn't seem like they have done a Stellar Blade for PC video, but I could be wrong about that. They may have done one already and I just missed it. Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is down to 44 in the top 100 concurrent players. I don't know if that is a case where a significant number of people have already gotten to the credits for a JRPG inspired game. It seems a little early for that, or if it is a case that maybe there's just been some fall off. It is summer. As part of that, you can see Deltarune is in the 66 spot. I had found a refurbished Steam Deck was on sale, so I got one for a kid, and so over the weekend I spent a lot of time setting up Family Share and all of that. The way Family Share seems to work is it says everybody has to be in the same household and that you have to have a significant play time, proving that you play games in that household. In reality, it seems like what you just have to do is, when making a new account, is just log in at that same Wi-Fi IP address. So if you are in a two-house situation where there's a divorced couple and the kid lives like at one house during the summer or other, it really is just a case that the kid's account has to be created on the same computer as your account, it seems, to get them into the family plan. And I don't think I've heard of any news of anybody being kicked off the family sharing plan. And then there's just a lot of setup there, some of which is not very informative or helpful. And I'm still in the middle of it, certainly figuring it all out. But one thing in particular is when you add a child account to family sharing, it gives you an option in the settings menu to select what games you can share with them. For me, I have about 1,500 games. I ended up sharing about 500, which is about 250 more than I had in my kids list collection in my library. And I did that manually, and that took several hours. When I've been coughing a lot these days, sorry. I've had just like horrible congestion for the past week, and potentially I'm gonna get sick for eating moldy cheese. Not cheese that was sold moldy, cheese that was sold fresh and turned moldy. But yeah, if you are in your library view and you right click on something, you can add and allow games via your library view to individual kid accounts way easier. So I could have taken my pre-made kids games list in my library, selected everything just with a control shift, and then I could have right clicked and added all of those games. So yeah, they don't make it obvious, they don't make it super easy, but it does seem like it's working fairly well. Although I will say that the refurbished Steam Deck had the exact same problem that my OLED Steam Deck had, which is that the Wi-Fi is just not in the right configuration setting the first time you turn it on, and that you will start this whole process and then it will have some kind of Wi-Fi problem and probably not even connect to your router, although it seemed like in this case it did connect to the router, it just was having trouble downloading. And then you're just going to have to hard power off the Steam Deck during that initial setup one time, and that is just a hassle, to say the least, as far as it not being even a troubleshooting tip that pops up while you are setting the whole thing up. But yeah, overall it seems like it's fine. It's certainly true that the LCD version that's refurbished I got because it was cheap and because I assume there will be a big improvement in a Steam Deck 2, assuming a Steam Deck 2 comes out or some other SteamOS device comes out. So I'm anticipating just a faster upgrade path, although that may very well not happen. And yeah, the kid I set it up to immediately had a wish list of some games and wanted Monster Hunter, so I bought Monster Hunter on my account. So at some point I can get around to playing Monster Hunter, but I will wait until he gets bored of it. And definitely I'm not. I've already spent way too much giving him a Steam Deck. I'm definitely not going to become a sugar daddy as far as games go. But I do find it slightly distasteful too to potentially ask to be repaid from a kid. So I wouldn't do that. But yeah, there is a weirdness, certainly there's, as a content creator, I want to own all the games on my account, and I am only a small bit concerned, but a little concerned that his account might get deleted or banned for something. So, which I would hope would not affect my account. But yeah, I don't think he's really a cheater or anything like that, but I don't know for sure. But yeah, you kind of want everything in one account. And so, but that may not really be the way it happens. The whole setting up of a child account doesn't seem to be particularly easy, in that you probably should be able to make an adult account very quickly, and then it should have a prompt as you're making an adult account, hey, do you want to make some child accounts also as an offshoot of this adult account? Instead, it's very much seems to be a case of you make an adult account clicking that you're 13 years or older, then you make a child account clicking that you're 13 years older, completely as a second separate process. Which, yeah, that's weird. And I know that you have to be 13 years or older legally to be on Steam in the first place, but you would think that the whole family concept would have better integration at this point when creating new accounts. And there is family sharing, and then there's family view. And basically family sharing is a completely separate system for sharing games and controlling what a child account can do, whereas family view is basically one computer with one login, and then you just are going into a family mode on your Steam client, whether it's on the Steam Deck or the desktop, to restrict what is visible. So it's basically like a kids mode on a phone, where you can turn a phone on some phones to a kids mode and then hand it over to the kids, and then it will lock down a lot of apps and things like that. Except for on Steam, it's really just locking down parts of the storefront and the libraries of games. So I'll probably learn a little bit more still about the whole process, but it may also be that there isn't a lot more to learn, that the kid is now in summer school break, so not in summer school, but in the school break for summer, and is probably going to just play a decent amount of games and then will only report back to me if there's a problem. Which, fingers crossed, there isn't. So I would just see that there's a... I probably won't learn too much more from the whole experience. He's just gonna play as much games as he can get away with. Steam points are weird in that you cannot use Steam points to buy the startup videos or keyboard layouts or any of the other things at the Steam shop for someone else, I have realized. But if you go to somebody's profile on Steam, you can give them community rewards, which apparently have like 23 of them. And so if you spend, say, about 1,000 Steam points for one community reward, and all of them have different values, there is one specifically that says take my Steam points, which is 4,800 Steam points, then a smaller amount of Steam points will be awarded to the receiver of the community awards, and the community awards themselves will end up being on their profile if they want to highlight it, and they will probably get a badge if they get enough community rewards. It is a awkward, complicated, stupid system in particular. And yeah, if you really want to change the startup's video, there's a Yeti plugin that will do that for free, or you could manually do it for free without having to buy the videos through the Steam shop and doing it through the Steam's OS, although I'm not really encouraging them to make huge mods. Instead, the encouragement is just to play games with it and enjoy it. This kid in particular, I'm not going to go into major details, is I think in a really weird and good situation in that he also has a Switch too, so like he's got basically everything he could ever want, and so it'll be interesting to see where his playtime goes. I'm a little concerned about battery life, certainly, and just how tethered he may end up being to a wall, particularly the LCD version. His battery life was not as good as the OLED version, but it may not really be a big deal. Let's see. Deltarune is another game that he wanted, and what's funny about that is that I think he had like these Switch versions, and he said chapters 1 through 4 is what he had, or he had 1 and 2. Yeah, chapters 1 and 2 are free for now, and then 3 and 4, which, yeah, seems like Deltarune is not actually a finished product, because more chapters are going to be released. And weirdly, he didn't seem to even know about Undertale, which Deltarune is the predecessor to Undertale. Deltarune is a anagram of Undertale, which I'm sure confuses the issue quite a bit. So yeah, that is almost certainly an indication that his friends are talking about games and he's not getting the full story or the correct story as far as releases, which I'm sure is the case for many people, that you just don't know. So what I wanted to do here on Expedition 33, which is not a game he's mentioned to me, although give him some time, and if he's heard about it, he probably will want to play it. I wanted to see the achievements here. How can you see achievements on a page from a Steam page? because we know the number of 24-hour peak players is lower. So the question that only achievements might give a hint towards. Let's see if this works. Nope, that's just going to give me a list of games with achievements. 99,000 games, by the way, is what that said. Yeah. I don't know if there is a way to see the achievements without having the game and owning it in your library. So yeah, that's a shame. Because I was hoping for some way to find more information. Apparently, on the 16th, the Ford Motor Company was founded. Why is that in video game history? I don't know. 122 years ago. I'm sure Ford may have licensed their products out at some point to video games, but they hardly are a video game company, and I don't think they've ever made a video game of any sort. If they did, it's probably some kind of tech demo or mobile thing. So yeah. If you can get a Steam Deck particularly refurbished, I think now is a great time to do that, unless you are planning on spending closer to $600 or $700 on a handheld device. If you're planning on spending that much, then there is a, let's see, Alice Madness Returns was released 14 years ago on Austria and Switzerland. Yeah. If you're planning on spending more than that, then there is a decent chance that the future handhelds that are coming, or the future handhelds that are available now, might be better offerings. I kind of have to, at the moment, take it as a case that the Lenovo Legion Go S is similar enough to the Steam Deck OLED that nobody has bothered to make any major comparison videos. That there seems to be no comparison of battery life or screen quality or button layout and button controls for the Lenovo Legion Go S, which is perhaps less of a interesting headline than comparison to say the Lenovo Legion Go S just runs way better on SteamOS than it does on Windows. It is probably creating a situation much like Android OS, where there will be wide varieties of modifications and performance between different phones, all running Android, even if the same version of Android is being run. Yesterday, 32 years ago, Princess Maker 2 was released, the PC 98 version in Japan. Yeah, all those games are reviewed pretty poorly on Steam, but historically I feel like they mean something to my history, and they mean something to gaming overall. But yeah, I lost my train of thought, I think, here. Oh no. Oh yeah, I was saying, yeah, SteamOS may be very much like Android, where there may just be fairly different amounts of performance. And I feel like cell phones in particular have gotten really much wider in their performance levels, because you have a lot of these cheaper cell phones that are designed not really to be able to do any kind of even mobile gaming. And then you have powerhouse gaming phones that have fans and liquid metal built into them that are designed potentially to do a lot more. And particularly in Android, it I think is going to come down to the cheapest phones barely being able to play music in the background while looking at a browser in the foreground and having just like 2 apps run at the same time. A big part of this is just the amount of RAM. A Nordic edition for Finland for Lollipop Chainsaw was released 13 years ago. Roughly 13 years ago. But yeah, a powerhouse gaming phone likely is going to have 6, 7, 8 apps that are still running in the background with no real problems. And for me, that's how I use my my phone quite a bit, is that I have 6 or 7, 8 things that I want to be running in the background, ready to go. Even if a lot of those things are just like, hey, is Discord running? Is my email client running? Is my RSS feed running to get updates? Things like that. Mostly, I really am just looking for music in the background, even on my phone, while while playing a game, which is somewhat demanding. And yeah, there are times where the videos in Magic Emotica start to get choppy and don't play right if I have something else running in the background on my phone. So of course I'm still using my old phone. I've kind of decided to keep my old phone and just try and keep and use it a little bit longer instead of moving over, which the whole moving over process is going to be probably a process of just starting over completely, since so much probably will have changed in between that time. But yeah, there's a real possibility that SteamOS may be too much like the Steam boxes concept, in that people are going to be building garbage hardware and trying to put SteamOS on it, and it's going to confuse the issue or taint the branding of SteamOS. Which, yeah, Valve really hasn't said that they were going to do anything to try and prevent that either. That there would be. I don't think they've ever said that there was going to be any real minimal hardware requirements or performance review of any sort for hardware. So there is definitely a danger that you're going to have things running SteamOS that can barely run games, or just gives you a way worse experience. But I don't think that the Windows handhelds are going to do much different than that either. But yeah. I guess that's what I've been thinking about, as I've been still just trying to accomplish a lot overall in life. Just trying to accomplish as much as possible until the Grim Reaper finally shows up. But I definitely, as you get older, I think you start to get that feeling that you're going to end up leaving a lot unfinished, and certainly I think I'm going to leave a lot unfinished. So yeah, I've been still playing TCG Pocket for some inane reason, which you can see on the charts, which really only get updated once a month. For May, still was in the top place. It's kind of pointless to scroll down this every stream, but whatever. As far as all that goes, still playing Magic Emotica and Seems like they've sped up the release content there, and I may have finally approached the point where I'm going to start hitting a wall, at which point I don't know what I can really do. Like, there are some enemies, even now that I have characters like at the max level, that could only barely get improved in some sub-skill styles that are struggling. So I just don't know if it actually is a case that you can beat all of the bosses with the current level cap, and if it isn't really more of a situation where the level cap is going to have to be raised before most players can get any further. But yeah, the biggest thing that's slowing things down is just how incredibly long fights are tending to take now. It's just like, you know you're going to win, but in many scenarios you can't click the skip button. Although sometimes you can click the skip button if you've beaten them before, in many cases. Or if you're doing player versus player, you can skip the fights. Memento Mori has a new character. At some point I need to get around to building my new computer, which is what this screen reminds me, although dragging that out a little bit longer isn't the worst case either. There's an actual rocket scientist I found on YouTube who is going through how to set up the still technically overclocking and are going to void your warranty, but heavily promoted and pushed overclocking settings that are available for AMD CPUs. And one of the things in particular, if I understand what he was saying, I'm going to have to watch the whole video very slowly and a second time through, almost certainly, when I get closer to setting it up, is that some of the faster RAM sticks literally cannot go as fast as they claim if you have 4 sticks in your motherboard. So it is, I guess, a general assumption that you might want to buy slower RAM and more RAM if you're going to have a whole bunch of tabs open, but for most people, buy 2 sticks of as big of RAM as you can get as a kit, and then never populate the 3rd and 4th slot that almost every motherboard is going to have. And that just seems crazy that that's the way that's going, is that you cannot have 4 channels all used at the same time at the highest speeds. But it kind of makes sense too, so maybe that's the problem with my computer, is that I have 4 sticks in it right now and I just don't have it configured right, and trying to push it at a higher speed is just going to be an impossibility. It is also possible that this claimed rocket scientist YouTuber, which I assume is true, he is a rocket scientist, it's also possible he doesn't know what he's talking about, but I will take any help I can find at this point, particularly when I start to think about building my next computer, which I still have a little bit of concern as far as being locked down on SteamOS on my next computer, if I will really be able to just manage everything. Now, I always need more storage. That is another thing. Certainly, it's just, I could, if I had if people supporting my Patreon or something, and I just had like an Amazon wishlist or something like that, a 2 terabyte, 4 terabyte micro SD card would be appreciated for really big projects I would like to do, projects in plural, but then just also more hard drives. I have a ton of old hard drives, and by the time I actually get a network attached setup, I wonder if any of those old hard drives are going to be even particularly in too good shape or big enough to even matter, because There definitely are some in there that I think are like 500 gigabytes, which in the old days would have been a ton and would have been expensive, but in the new days, yeah, they may not be worth even keeping around, and the power usage could be massive. You can see my chart here I still haven't worked on. I didn't work on anything, so all of my my macro again went wonky, and so all of the tabs are in weird places. I don't know why it's doing that. I did make a slight change, so maybe it's fixed now, but probably not. One of the things is that I did turn on Family View on my accounts to play around with it, so we may find that a lot of tabs are going to have to be reloaded because it's going to ask me to log into Family View when reloading will undo it. But yeah, here's Amulet of Dreams. It's generally the thought that most hidden object games are just a lot of cut and paste assets that are used to make dozens upon dozens of variations of hidden object games, and that definitely is the feeling for Amulet of Dreams. I thought it might be a Chinese company that made it. In the end, it was Russian names in the credits, so it definitely feels like it might have been one of those cheap, low-effort Russian games. Some speculate that's because of money laundering that they're made. Some speculate that it's just because it's the only way to make some money for some people in Russia. Yeah, there's a bunch of achievements that you will get all of them if you make it to the end, and you can see that 45% of players made it to the end, and the other 55% of players almost certainly quit because the game was just so bad. It doesn't have quite enough hidden object elements as a hidden object game, and it repeats the scenes from hidden object elements often twice, maybe even once. They used it 3 times, and it's just not really a good experience. In fact, frankly, it is just an entire category worse than something like the Blackwell point and click games, which I felt like those were rather rough point and clicks, and that was the contrast I was trying to make, is to say here's what hidden object games are like and how they are distant cousins of each other. But as a fan of point and clicks and not really a fan of hidden object games, I definitely appreciated the Blackwell series way more than I appreciated the Amulet of Dreams. Yeah. One of the things certainly also is, as I was setting up the child account for family sharing, is just trying to remember and know what games should be family friendly or not. It doesn't really give you a direct picture of all the games. So you can see my fall list has bumped up to 54. But yeah, if I just look at like all games on my account for a second, it's hard to know in particular, since I'm not the kid's parent, what is appropriate and what is not. I generally have a concept of what is way inappropriate, but it is in the mushy middle and the finer details that things might be lost. So yeah, I had a question certainly about like the rebooted Tomb Raider series. Like honestly, I don't think for the kid's age that is probably appropriate, whereas I think Lego games definitely are. And Ni no Kuni I think is fine. Binding of Isaac is definitely not appropriate, and the vast majority of the games I have are not appropriate. Assassin's Creed, his parents may be fine with them playing that, but I think it probably is a little inappropriate. Perhaps just with the Templars and the Assassin's story of the early Assassin's Creed games in particular. Hellblade, I would say, is inappropriate. Weirdly, Skyrim was one of the few games that was flagged in the store for having a adult content. In reality, I don't think Skyrim really has any adult content. I think it's just the mods. But there are assassins and murders and things like that in it. Even like Overlord may be too much of a dark theme, so it might not really be appropriate. And so I did my best, and then I told the parents that they're going to have to just probably go through the entire list. But you don't even get like thumbnails, so in some of the cases being told something's name is not that helpful. And yeah, I don't know if it would have been appropriate to give the first Wolfenstein game, not the rebooted series, but like the original Wolfenstein, Shanti as a series. I probably would think would be fine for them to play, but it is a genie girl who is showing a lot of belly, so I opted against that. Zombies and gore seems to be something that concerns them quite a bit. Deponia, again, might just be a little bit too sardonic and sarcastic of a game. Or Anna's Quest may be just a game that has too sad of an ending. Obviously Lorelei is not appropriate. It's way too scary. Dead Space is not appropriate. The Witness may be not appropriate because it's just too difficult, but frankly, that's not something that I would really concern myself with. Let the kids bang their heads against... I don't even remember playing Puzzle Dimension, so I don't remember what the game is. The Talos Principle, just because of themes, might be inappropriate, but it depends on the age, it depends on the parents. No More Heroes, obviously not appropriate. Broken Sword would probably be fine as a series. But you know, when you're really getting down to this is E for everyone, I think anybody who is capable of playing video games at all, who is in late elementary school or later type age appropriateness, Cat Quest is one of the few that you'd say, yes, that's good for everybody. Lego, that's good for everyone. Even Epic Mickey might be a little scary. Zero Time Dilemma, definitely not appropriate. Poker Night at the Inventory might be appropriate, but I don't think it is. I think there's just a lot of dialogue and story there that would do it. Obviously Honey Pop is not appropriate, being an adult sex game. But yeah, Killer 7 is not appropriate. Sexy Brutale probably would be fine if you wanted to play it, but the name alone makes it inappropriate. You don't want somebody looking over your shoulder and seeing that title. Bayonetta is not appropriate. Shame Bayonetta 2 and 3 never came to Steam. Psychonauts, probably not appropriate. Dirt 3, I don't think you can get anymore. Human Resources Machine is a programming game. It's fine. Shadowhand should be fine. Magic Cat's fine, although it would be difficult. Castle Crashers, Fez, Owlboy should be fine. DuckTales should be fine, but it's a little bit difficult. It'll Do 1 and 2 should be fine. I think the Turing Test is fine. Her Story, probably not super appropriate, just because of the story and the themes. Monkey Island should be fine. 3D Mark is just a testing app, which I don't even think runs on the Steam Deck. Dust and Elysian Tale, probably fine. Max Carson Brotherhood. Not all these games are actually available to share too. Watchmaker probably would be fine, but I don't think it was a particularly good game. Sakura Clicker, probably not appropriate just because there's a lot of skin being shown on it. The Myth series, fine. Agatha Christie ABC Murders is going to get an exception, certainly because of Agatha Christie being involved. even though it is murder mystery things. Like Magnetic Case Clothes is a puzzle game, but it's also a puzzle game where you're being used as a lab rat in a prison, so might be a problem there. Costume Quest obviously should be age appropriate. The Guardian of Light and Guardian of Osiris Lara Croft games probably fine. Res Infinite would probably be fine. Most Star Wars games are probably fine for this kid. This kid in particular is particularly sweet and saccharine and too clean and yeah, but he's also at the age where he could certainly become an edgelord teenager, so I don't want to get blamed for when or if that happens. Return to Obra Dinn, probably fine. I wouldn't say yes to the Vagrant. There's just a lot of boobage in that character design. Yes to the Blob, that's kid friendly. Reigns is probably fine because of the way things are presented in a lot of these games. A lot of these feel more fine. Like I would say, but I don't remember for certainty, that Enslaved Odyssey to the West is probably fine, but I wasn't certain, so that was a no. But yeah, there's a lot of bits about how it's presented. Some of the Darksiders games and Fury, I would have said okay too, but I just eliminated them because of what they had flagged themselves on the storefront as far as the content in them. I wouldn't say yes to Kathy Rain just because it's a bad game. Yeah, I don't know if this Ghostbusters game is shareable. Some of these games are just like old and you can see they don't even have images. And so with that, I kind of say no to the Edna and Harvey games. Death's Hangout is actually fine if you want to play it. Regency Solitaire is fine. Oxenfree is probably fine, but out of an abundance of caution, I said no to that. I would say D-Rester isn't fine though. Like, the way that game can be interpreted in its randomly generated story is pretty dark. The cave might be too dark. Like Shank is going to be too bloody. Echo, I don't feel like was a particularly good game. After all was said and done, it looked real pretty. Pushover is a very old game, that would be fine. Chariot's probably fine. Wizorb is fine. Now I'm just going to scroll down my entire list just to give a general idea of here's what my library is at the point. Child of Light I think would be fine. I don't think it's shareable. But yeah, Never Alone, I would highly recommend kids play that for educational reasons. But like Cradle is tagged on the gameplays as having adult content. I don't remember it having adult content, but maybe it did. Dropsy I wouldn't do just because it's creepy and weird. Whereas like Ticket to Ride is fine. Obviously something with suicide in the name is going to be a no. OBS Studio is an app, that would be a no. Banishing of Ethan Carter, probably fine, but maybe not. Yeah. Some of these older, humongous games like Pajamas Sam and Spy Fox definitely are fine. Grow Up, Grow Home is fine. Koi Koi Life in Japan is, I think, fine. But yeah, I don't have a massive amount. I think Submerged is a good game of adult games, but Cuphead is fine to give to kids. It's just going to be incredibly difficult. But there is enough here to show kind of an accurate representation of Beyond Eyes should be fine. What the experience really is in video games, where the I don't remember even playing Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine. Maybe it didn't launch. Where it is really hard to have a decent collection of games on a Steam scale that are kid appropriate, but that's on a Steam scale where 1,500 games is not insane because it's all Steam sales. In contrast, this kid has like 20 games on his Switch 1, so yeah. On a more realistic scale of screen time and things like that, it's a library that's more than acceptable. You could easily just buy all the Lego games and all the Disney games, things with Lego in the name and things with Disney in the name, and you'd have 50 games. Now, one of these games, like Silent Age, I know had a weird ending where it's like this adult daughter reading her father's novel that never got printed after his death, and at the very end there's just like this weird twist that happens out of nowhere where the father, who had obviously inserted the daughter when she was younger into this novel and inserted himself into the novel, was then having those two characters in this novel have an incestuous relationship. And it just comes out of nowhere. And I think that might be the Silent Age, but I'm not 100% sure. There's 2 or 3 games that are the same. Gone Home, probably fine for kids to play, but super scary, so it's going to come down to scaring. The Mahjong Pretty Girls game, I'd say no to. Almost all kids these days are Japanophiles to some extent, so they might tend to want to play Mahjong Pretty Girls, but it's very much, what are you going to get caught playing? What are your parents going to see on your activity list, or friends see and make fun of you with, or look over your shoulder and see? So anything that looks inappropriate is inappropriate. Anything that is slightly inappropriate is inappropriate. So the effort very much is to be squeaky clean and maintain a good relationship and access in general to the games overall, because parents will overreact potentially and just say, that's it, we're deleting your entire Steam account. So, yeah. Weirdly Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons, I would have said was appropriate, but that was one of the ones store pages that had more violence in it, and I guess at the end it probably does. That the back half of that game is more violent than you'd think. Some of these party games don't make a lot of sense to give to kids. I don't think. Like the You Don't Know Jack party packs boxes in particular. A lot of these older games I don't think are shareable at all. Same in Max, I felt like that probably would have been inappropriate. Of course, this kid's gonna potentially grow up, and in like 2 or 3 years, it may very well be the case that it's like, they're old enough, just let them have everything. Which is a big part of this whole process, is also getting their parents to have a parental account and control all the settings instead of me dealing with it. Thought about the Stanley Parable. It's probably fine, but yeah, I don't really think I'd encourage a kid to play a Stanley Parable. I thought it was done there. How do you do it? Probably not appropriate. Love Letter is fine. It's just a little card game in digital format. Pac-Man games are fine. Pinball games, I think, for the most part, are fine. And for anybody who has a new Steam Deck, you definitely should download Aperture Desk Job and play it first, because it basically should just be installed by default, frankly. because it's a nice way of just introducing the gyroscope and other options that are on the Steam Deck in particular that you probably won't use too much of, but it's nice to know that they're there. Jones on Fire would be fine. Downwell's probably fine. Limbo maybe a little too grim. World of Goo I think is fine. Yeah, this just comes to almost a crawl. Tabletop Simulator is fine, but I don't think kids are really going to get much out of it. And see, this was like the Wolfenstein 3D game that I was thinking is like Doom 1, Doom 2, Wolfenstein 3D. Probably would be fine, but the kids also wouldn't really want to play it. Cry of Fear. Apparently I played this for 16 minutes. Must have not launched. Probably should go through this and figure out what games I've actually tried to play and just wouldn't play. That'd be a great thing to do if with my new computer build when I get around to it. I would not say this is appropriate. It definitely is not. And yeah, it's almost impossible for any regular parent to just know every video game in and out and know which ones are worth playing, which ones aren't, and which ones are appropriate to play, which ones aren't. Sinister City looks like a hidden object game. Apparently I've played one before. I thought Amulet of Dreams was the first hidden object game I'd ever played, but Sinister City might be slightly different. This one, A New Beginning Final Cut, probably isn't the game I'm thinking of because I don't have any playtime on that game. So yeah, that's the entirety of it, and I didn't go through every single game there, but I think that does highlight a lot. Man, is this just going to keep on scrolling? I guess it is. Alice Madness Returns is obviously not acceptable. Yeah, I think that's... Did I literally only get to the A's on the list? Was this an alphabetical list, or did it go in circles? Yeah. Obviously that's not a particularly great way to go through the whole setup anyways. Steam is having a fishing fest, and there is that, which I guess is promoting a game called Cast and Chill. And yeah, as the one thing I would say about, we'll talk about Borderlands 4 in a second too, the Steam Deck that I don't like is that I haven't even seen a mod out there that will have it boot up to your library instead of booting up to the front page. If you lock out the front page on a child's account, I don't know what it's going to do, but it definitely has a start screen of a sort, and that start screen front page is by default designed to promote and sell games, which, yes, they, like everybody else, are trying to convince you to spend more money. No huge surprise there, but also you have every right to be disgruntled by it for a product you paid for. There might be a mod, but I just haven't found it. Let's see, we've got what looks like a decent amount of new games as far as new and trending. And top sellers, noticeably the Steam Deck is falling lower and lower because, in part because of the Switch 2 being available, in part because availability is limited. And we've got a lot of popular upcoming games, although not a lot of them jump out to me as being something special. And sales are always happening. And then trending free Shadowverse Worlds Beyond is 75% positive with 227 points. So if you wanted to get into Shadowverse, Worlds Beyond might be the one to get into right now, at least. Rooftops and Alleyways, you can see, is overwhelmingly positive. It seems like it is somewhat also of a MMO experience. But yeah, 96% positive, 94. That alone I think does justify putting it on the wish list. Borderlands 4, after all that Randy Pitchford backlash of true fans will find a way to pay $80 for the game, is now available for pre-purchase, with it being $70, $69.99, which most $60 games in recent times have actually been $69.99 US dollars anyways. Now, noticeably, there is a deluxe edition and a super deluxe edition that bumps it up to $99 to $100 and $130. And let's see, what do you get on top of that? You have something called a Bounty Pack Bundle and Firehawk's Fury, and a Vault Hunter Pack, and an Ornate Order Pack if you go 130. Which, yes, that's another thing certainly that anybody new to Steam, particularly kid, is going to have to realize and learn, is just how deceptive a lot of these bundles and DLCs can be, as far as what is the real price for getting the game that you really want, and what are you willing to say no to, as far as skins and things like that, which in Borderlands' case, I don't think you should be paying for any extra skins at all. I think that's crazy. And if you do love the game a ton, which that is a big if, get to skins later. For all we know, you will have a built-in skin for this character that looks very similar to the one they're offering, and you are just getting a color palette swap, which is what the skins have been in previous Borderlands games, is that they have just been color palette swaps more than anything else. So the bounty bundle is 4 unique areas, 4 missions plus unique bosses, 4 vault cards and unique challenges and rewards. I don't know what a vault card even is. New gear, weapons and vehicles, and cosmetics. So it seems like this post-launch content of the bounty pack bundle is probably season pass type stuff. There's the Vault Hunters pack. There's new story and side missions, with 2 new playable Vault Hunters probably being the ones that get the new story missions and side missions, and 2 mapped regions, new gear, new weapons. So yeah, the Firehawk Fury is just a weapon skin, so it's basically nothing. And the Gilded Glory pack is just skins. So, and the Ornate Order pack is just skins, it looks like. So, going back up here, it seems to be the case that what the Bounty Hunter pack more than likely is a season pass for future content, considering they're not using the phrase season pass in this. But yeah, there's no two separate post-launch DLC packs, the Vault Hunter pack. Yeah, they're just promising two separate DLCs, which is probably not, it's not even really promising that much. So yeah, here's what that character looks like without that skin. You can see it is just the exact same outfit with just a color palette swap. So yeah, particularly for Borderlands 4, I don't think there's a lot of reasons to buy it day one unless you're going to be playing with other people, and I don't think there's a ton of reasons to pre-order it at all and not wait for some reviews. But even if you must just play it now, probably you're better off getting the cheapest version now, because sales tend to be pretty prominent for Borderlands to upgrade and get DLC and things like that, which only 2 of the 5 DLC elements pre-order bonuses there actually are DLC content, actual game content instead of just cosmetic content. But yeah, all of that, true fans will find a way to spend $80, which for its intent or not, I imagine it was not, seems to really have just forced them into a corner of charging $70 at least for the default base price. The bigger story certainly will be just the reception of Borderlands 4. Is it going to be somehow a reboot, refresh of the series with all new characters, and basically nobody from the previous games coming back as far as the characters in the story in the game? Or is it just going to be a little bit worse than Borderlands 3, which was a little bit worse than Borderlands 2, or maybe a lot worse than Borderlands 2? So we'll have to just wait and see. These cast and chill games are an interesting thought, but they are also just like idle games, so I just don't think I would really ever have a reason to play this. Unless I started to get into some kind of sleeping while streaming gimmick, which I don't think I would want to do that. But there definitely are people who make second channels where it's just stuff happening while they're asleep. Often it's cameras watching them sleep, which I would never do that, but that wouldn't make me feel comfortable at all. Yeah, the kind of idea of idle games, that style of games, makes a very hard way to cover that kind of things. Interesting. So they offer some fishing games. The first one is Dead Rising 2, which I don't feel like there's even fishing in this game. Let's check that out and see if it's somehow tagged fishing in some insane way. Ultimate Fishing Simulator. I haven't been looking certainly for a realistic fishing simulator. I don't think too many people like fishing or as a hobby anymore, and probably for the better if that's the case. And if people were going to need to fish for food, I don't think they would actually use fishing rods and hooks to fish. I think they would more than likely use spears or nets, probably nets. And frankly, I think at this point the entirety of the generation that did enjoy fishing has probably died out at this point. Yeah, I wouldn't expect that there's too many people around still that would be into it. And see, this is an interesting case where I have been trying to keep an eye out for fishing games, and the reviews have been kind of rough on some of them, and there's just been not a great way to find fishing without just typing in fishing. I haven't gotten around to doing that. Apparently, Drowned Lake is a fishing game, they're saying, that's coming soon. Looks like a horror game to me. Building relationships doesn't look like a fishing game. What lies below looks like it might be a fishing game. There's quite a lot of games here that may have fishing mini games, but Fishing Girls Fantasy. Yeah, I would say that most Japanese people have an idealized thought of what fishing is and no real understanding of what the real experience is. And so, catch, carp, and coarse fishing. Let's see. This is from 2020. Fishing Persona Paradiso. It's already on my wish list, but doesn't really look like a fishing game. Deadliest Catch, you can see is mixed reviewed at 51%, so that would be a no. Ultimate Fishing Simulator 2, you can see is mixed reviewed, so that would be a no. Dreading Net Quota, I will make a YouTube short on that, since that seems to be a brand new game. The Catch, Carp, and Coarse Fishing is our best contender so far. Ships at Sea is mixed overall too. And I think that's the problem, is that a lot of people try to make fishing games, but the reviews are all bad. It's a little interesting that Steam would even have a fishing sale. I have a massive amount of mounts. That's one thing about buying a Steam Deck, is it gives you a massive amount of Steam points. So the fact that you can't gift those Steam points specifically to the person you gave the Steam Deck to just shows that they really have not thought this whole process through as far as the way it goes. And see, when you get these items, they're not tradable, they're not marketable, it's not offering you to put it on a different account at all. There is this as a thought though. Community awards. So you can give community awards, which gives points to other people. Sometimes when you read a review that was helpful, unique, or just written so well that you want to shake a person's hand, you can now recognize their work by giving them an award. Some user-generated content is so great that you print it out, you can give an award. Impressed with another profiles, amazed with someone's insightful post on discussion boards, points can be used directly to reward them. So, yeah. You cannot buy these community awards from the looks of it. So you apparently, I guess, just have to earn them. Yeah. And then it seems like once you earn them, they may be viral awards that you can then gift to other people. And then a lot of these things are just like way too expensive, when the reality of it is the startup movies and the keyboards that you would want to see. You'd think maybe a family share would also have spring sale 2025 complete bundle. I think I may have just ended up getting most of those already. Yeah, I think I own everything there. Yeah, some of these are just like really expensive and they are completely valueless otherwise, so, and they're just not intriguing or interesting to me at all. So yeah, I would be very happy to be able to just hand over 10-20,000 points and just let the kid get keyboards, which I haven't even bought all the keyboards because, yeah, you just don't really need them. I never even used this one for the startup movies, which are the one thing that you might want to get, but those two are kind of expensive. None of these startup movies, by the way, have mute options, and it seems just so crazy that you cannot boot or reboot your Steam Deck without it making sound, or without muting your Steam Deck, which if you're locked up and need to reboot it, you can't really mute it. I'm not even sure you can mute it anyways. I would assume the volume stays the same if it passed a hard reboot, but maybe not. And I don't think any of these are amazingly good as far as these startup movies. Anyways, like there definitely are more community ones done through the Decky plugin that are more intriguing, but also they are done by copyright infringement, which makes them more intriguing. Dave the Diver obviously is a game that's on my wish list, but I don't know if I would really call it a actual fishing game. It doesn't even seem like he actually does fish too much. Dredge is another one, but it has that Cthulhu horror element to it, I believe, too, so it's not just like natural fishing. So like Ultimate Fishing Simulator for $2 might be worth it, but then you might be buying yourself up into a nightmare scenario where there's just a ton of DLC. Which, yeah. All of a sudden, specific lakes are getting thrown in, and with different lakes, I suspect you might very well have different fish. I'm not sure the fish will be programmed to move in any other direction or any different style, and that's a lot more than $2 certainly, although $13 is not that much for a video game. It's definitely a lot less than $100. Yep, and this one looks good too, but it's a little bit newer. Well, not that new, it's from 2021, so it's not getting discounted. quite as much as I would have liked it to see it go. We're going late today. I said we were going to end up doing about an hour of warm-up, and instead we've gone long. For this game in particular is kind of weird in that you basically have a completely different character. Yeah, it is a completely different character in the second game, and it makes the whole system weird. So we see crafting, we see survival, we see zombies as a tag. I don't know if there even is a way to... Let's see if there is a fishing tag. Notice that they're immediately suggesting clicker, casual, and free to play. Yeah, so fishing is a tag. Yeah. So you can add your own tags to games. I don't know why you would really want to do that, but it probably would help if more people did that overall. So this really just feels like this is Capcom being scummy by somehow accidentally or intentionally having their game labeled as a fishing game, when in no way it is a fishing game. If controller support doesn't work, where's the controller support? Let's see. I was wondering if something here would have been labeled as fishing. Yeah, seems like Steam's algorithm for their sales in particular still needs some work. Now, ice fishing does feel like a different experience, so it's not the worst thought either. But is this something you can play without VR? Or is this a VR game only? Play with or without VR, it says. Alright, so that's a couple of fishing games to potentially make some YouTube shorts on. The catch carp and coarse fishing, I think, has a lot less DLC at the moment, so it would be a cheaper move than some of these other games. Alright, so we're going to wrap up here. Do we have any refurbs of the Steam Deck? No. Are we expecting to see any refurbs of the Steam Deck at all from Valve? Probably not. I would imagine they're going to hold on to any refurbs they have and try and sell that. Now, weirdly, it looks like the page where Steam Decks are for sale has been moved around somewhere, so it's not where it should be. So we'll run into that later, and then we can look quickly and see that Stellar Blade is up to number 5 as far as games being played on the Steam Deck. Deltarune is number 7. Clear Obscures number 13. Helldivers 2, 17, interesting. 2K25, surprisingly, on the 25th spot. Hogwarts Legacy. Definitely one I should probably think about getting the next time it's on sale. Yeah. Certain point here, I'm also just bleeding money, but I guess in part this summer can be a summer in which I can get a feel of just how many games this kid can really go through, but from what I hear, he can go through games pretty quickly, as most kids can, because they talk to each other. They're better at games than old people like me, and they have the internet and the ability to look up answers, whereas back in my day, if I want to sound like a very old person, we didn't have the internet, so we couldn't really figure out solutions to games that were often designed much worse and designed to waste your time. So yeah, and I don't think too many kids these days are trying to 100% games as much as we used to in the old days. Resident Evil Village, $9.99, not a terrible price. Yeah, when you get to like these games, although it's worth pointing out that the price being shown here is just the base game, so the price actually itself is much higher. Let's see, Undertale's in the 86th per spot for people catching up. Yeah. Lego Star Wars is in the 92nd spot. Final Fantasy VII, by the way, also we found is kind of deceptively labeled in that there's several games labeled Final Fantasy VII on Steam, and really only the remake of Interlude and I think Introduction? Nah, that's not the name of the first game. I think it's Rebirth and Interlude is the names of Final Fantasy VII remakes. But there's like an MMO, and there's several other older versions of the old version of Final Fantasy VII that really confuse the issue. Which the Japanese do love to confuse the issue when listing games on Steam. Capcom and Konami in particular, I think, love to do that. Alright, so we've got a couple of Video Games Chronicle articles, but then it's going to start to fall apart very quickly. Final Fantasy XVI runs at 720p on the Xbox Series X in performance mode. The long-awaited Xbox Series X version has been criticized for its performance. Is this his? I think one of the DF Retro guys, Digital Foundry guys, I guess. Is this the one that also really implied that it wasn't going to come to PC or Xbox in the first place? I think it may have been. Yeah, I feel like Final Fantasy is just kind of all over the place. Let's see. The next story, we finally have an actual story around the Stellar Blade. A PC release. The ex-PlayStation exclusive Stellar Blade smashes God of War, The Last of Us, and Spider-Man. With its Steam debut, Stellar Blade saw over 6 times as many concurrent players on Steam as The Last of Us Part 2. Which, yeah. Enthusiasm maybe not loud, but it is definitely there for Stellar Blade on PC. And there was, frankly, a significant lack of enthusiasm for each of these games because they were released a little bit later from their initial release on PlayStation. And yes, the situation just kind of has changed, I think, overall. But it also probably speaks to these being more Western games, and a Eastern Asian audience may have jumped aboard quite a lot more for Stellar Blade. which, yes, South Korea has very few game companies, and Shift Up is one of them. Makers of Stellar Blade, the developers. South Korea also being levied with a 50% tariff on appliances like Samsung refrigerators and dryers, washers, things like that, which, yeah, that could really hurt a lot of people involved if all of a sudden everything is 50% more expensive to purchase. But yeah, the whole tariff situation really pushed me to spend a lot early, and I'm hoping that was the right move. It may very well prove not to be the right move, but who knows. And yeah, I think people in general are gonna struggle financially as things go on, as far as just the tariffs go. Although, if the tariffs were less round numbers, they would make a lot of sense to me too. Like it is kind of crazy, in particular as far as appliances, washers, dryers, air conditioners, refrigerators. Those things were made in the United States relatively recently, in the past few decades, and there has just been a allowing of, with world trade, of those jobs to leave the United States and often go to Mexico or Canada or all the way across the world to Asian countries, when, if tariffs had been levied earlier more appropriately and not just been 50%, because that sounds like a bright number, then potentially a lot of jobs would have been saved. Of course, there is scenarios where that's also a problem, because then you don't get the smart Samsung combined dryer and washing machines that people might really want, as far as a new generation of condenser dryers, I believe is what they're called. And there is a great example of how electronics are required to be UL listed if sold in the United States, home wiring electronics in particular, which is a good thing. But then in the same breath, there has been no standardization or competition really to create standardization in circuit breaker panels. So there literally are like maybe 3 or 4 different companies that make 3 or 4 different types of circuit breaker panels, all of which really only support their one style of circuit breakers. And it has created a situation where, yes, for the most part, circuit breakers are safe in the United States, but they're way overpriced for what they are, and they're not evolved in any way, where it would make a lot more sense if there had just been enough competition to push regulation so that the code required all circuit breaker panels be on DIN rails like they do in the UK, and thus all of the Chinese Zigbee smart monitoring circuit breakers that you might want to get would snap into the DIN rails and work in that same form factor, and then it would just be on either the UL labs to rate and review those Chinese products, or it would be on the homeowners to risk burning down their house by using a Chinese product, which, yeah, there is a risk there, certainly. In fact, right now I have a circuit breaker that's a Eaton circuit breaker brand that potentially is breaking. It's either the circuit breaker or it is my countertop oven, but I don't think it's countertop oven or the smart switch that was on it, because that, when I plugged it into a different outlet, worked fine. And when I moved the power strip, it might be the power strip, but I bought a heavy duty power strip, so if the power strip is the problem, that's crazy, but somewhat believable. Anyways, none of that has to do with video games, but yes, Samsung in particular has a very weird situation in which they basically are a corporatocracy, or they're as close to a corporatocracy, I think, that we have seen publicly of any country, and they have just so much influence over South Korea that if all of a sudden they aren't making money, all of South Korea isn't making money, and their entire country is in a weird situation, then in a bad situation. Which I don't want to see that happen. I don't want to see Shift Up all of a sudden not making video games because they're too busy or too broke. Let's see. Moving on, Remedy Entertainment shares plans for FBC Firebreak free content. All playable post-release content will be free. However, Remedy will sell cosmetic items, which that is about the best thing I think you can say to keep people happy. I think we are at a point now, though, where every single person representing anybody in the video game industry should probably not wear hats, or at least baseball caps. Doesn't matter if it has nothing on it, doesn't matter if it has a logo on it. I think we are just at the point that anything looks potentially too much like a MAGA hat, and frankly it's just unprofessional in the first place. Sure, I know a lot of these people are bald. That's what happens to men when they get relatively old. I mean, usually it starts happening in the 20s for some men. But find a different way to deal with that and just bald gracefully. Don't wear hats in podcasts and when you're doing presentations. Frankly, if it has to get back to having wigs, do that. And then we're going to basically look at like one Gematsu article before things are going to get messed up and we're going to be all over the place, I think. Let's see, this week's Japanese game releases are Rydo Remastered, The Mystery of the Soulless Army, Cho Aniki Bakuretsu Ran Taohu Hin, and more. That's this game. Weirdo character. That's what Hin means. It's weirdo or pervert. I think this is an old game being re-released. So this will be like the lineup for the second big announcement, or second big week of the Switch 2 release. So it'll be intriguing to see if Switch 2 sales drop off significantly, as there just won't be a new game to purchase this week. If we see game sales in particular just drop off significantly, because that is believable that would happen. Tron Catalyst I've already looked at. I still think some of this may be from my news too, is that we're looking at like news updates for games. But yeah, if it's checked and there's no new user reviews, then it's not going to give me anything informative. This game probably... No, these games can't be based off of my follow list news. They're not even on the follow list. Come to think of it. Right. I don't know what this is, so I'm gonna bring it over here and say it is Scum. Which, yeah, we can, I guess, show that. This is still in early access from 2018, and it is tagged nudity. But I don't think there's really a lot of that in the game. It just may be the case that characters can take off their clothes and get down to their underwear. I don't know if they can get fully nude. Yeah. So again, I just don't understand what link is opening up there. And again, we'll see some gaming on Linux articles. Escape Simulator has native Linux support, a native Linux version again. Devs still are recommending the Proton. I feel like they, it may have been a different game, but definitely feels like some games have announced that it definitely seems like they are struggling to figure out, or some people are struggling to figure out which way is better. And in general, I think it's almost 6 of one, half a dozen of another, in that you can put all your focus on a native Linux build, and then every time there is an update to Linux, you might need to update the native Linux build, or you can put all of your focus on a PC build that is hopefully going to work with Proton and try and make your game so it works with Proton. Weirdly, I think it'll be probably never, if it ever did happen, it'd be a long time from now before we start to see significant numbers of games have native Linux builds. There's just going to be so many games that are never going to get updates at all, where Proton is going to have this compatibility elements and be necessary to play so many old games that it would have to be years upon years of every AAA game having native Linux builds for extra performance. And I think most games probably wouldn't even feel better if they had native Linux builds. Theoretically, yes, native Linux builds will run better than a API middleman that's got to do some extra processing, but it probably won't be worth the effort. And it is potentially a problem that will just solve itself with more powerful hardware. Inherently, 20 years ago, you wouldn't have been able to run a emulator on something like a Raspberry Pi to play even a PlayStation 1 game. Now, because the software is better, because the emulation's better, because the hardware is better, that totally can happen. We still, however, are at a weird position where emulating the Nintendo 64 chipsets is kind of hard to do. So there is still room for improvement there, optimization in the software and optimization in the hardware. This game, The Abandoned Planet. Yeah, where are these links coming from? I need to work on my macros, obviously, and figure out where these random links are coming from. I don't really hate them, but they are just confusing the issue when I see a game that is... Whoops, I didn't show that at all, did I? Well, I guess we can undo it and show it that way. But, yeah. It really just confuses the issue when there's something from 2024. And it also kind of highlights where I had wanted to really only consider games that had over 30 reviews in less than 6 months, but the reality of the situation is probably becoming more that there are more hidden gems to be found if you wait a year or longer, probably 3 or 4 years, before really considering a game irrelevant by not having 30 user reviews. Of course, a big part of that, this is where the game developer and all the new games on Steam should have been. This is called Snow Plowing Simulator. Which... Why is Snow Plowing Simulator tagged as adult content? I don't know. Yeah. Nature simulation, sandbags, family friendly, job simulator, diving, immersive sim, life sim, realistic adventure, snow, RPG. Yeah, none of those tags should have triggered adult content pop up. I don't know what happened there. I don't know if I particularly care about snow plowing, but somebody might. Here we have what looks like a visual novel. Although, I would say be careful around visual novels that just have like one character in many different poses in the screenshot. That may imply that there's not particularly a lot of characters or a lot of story. And these images are being said to be made by an AI of some sort. And it doesn't support English, so it's got at least 3 strikes against itself as to why I would say no to promoting and making a YouTube short on something like that. 1402, some kind of puzzle game. If this is something people have played in the past, I don't recognize it. Desktop waifu is going to be a no. Inherently, I guess the Steam Deck in gaming mode, in particular for SteamOS, is going to probably lead to the elimination of a lot of these desktop apps that are going to have somebody running on a desktop. I don't know how well desktop apps would run in the first place on desktop mode on SteamOS, but yeah, if you're in gaming mode, you're not going to be going to your desktop too much, and it is almost certainly a terrible experience if you are going to play in desktop mode to launch this desktop version of the Steam client, to launch desktop versions of games on Steam. There might be a few games that need that, certainly, but it is not going to be a default thought, and it's not going to be a default experience unless you're just on desktop mode, like doing something else, which, yes, maybe that's a case. Speaking of cases, in getting another device, it came with a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse that, yeah, having Bluetooth keyboard and mouse instead of ones that use dongles is an intriguing aspect. Unfortunately, the keyboard and the mouse are far too small for my hands, so I'm going to end up giving it away anyways, but it is nice, particularly on a Steam Deck, to say, hey, just connect to the Bluetooth here and don't take up that one USB-C port with some kind of hub to then take up one of the ports on the hub with some kind of keyboard and mouse dongle. Of course, if you're looking for a good keyboard, you're probably going to end up doing that anyways, because I imagine Bluetooth keyboards and mice, while fine, are not the best experience as far as fast typing. But also, the one thing you would do in desktop mode is play Minecraft Java Edition. It is crazy that Microsoft hasn't decided to release either Bedrock Edition or Java Edition. One of those two editions on Steam. That would make a lot of sense. Certainly, it might be an act of desperation, certainly on Microsoft's part, but it would be really nice. But to play Minecraft on a Steam Deck, is probably going to be a better experience if you're playing mouse and keyboard. You can certainly map the controls to the Steam Deck's inputs, but it's going to be rough. The game is just, the Java edition of the game is just not designed that way. And yes, you're going to have a Minecraft account, which means you have to have a Microsoft account, and it's just this whole hassle for something. It really shouldn't be a hassle. Alright, so we are now deep into the point of which all the tabs are messed up. So Video Games Chronicle says pre-orders for the Xbox ROG Ally will reportedly begin in August and will launch expected 2 months later. The new Xbox branded handheld will support Steam, Good Old Games, Battle.net, and more. Yeah, I think that was something that people maybe didn't get, is that this thing is just running Windows, so yes, it can run Steam, and yes, it would be running games on Windows through Steam, so you might have slightly more compatibility there, but you might have considerably less performance as far as just the experience there, because you're running a Windows app on a handheld device that is still going to be running some weird AMD Ryzen Z2 chips, and so yeah, it is definitely going to be a different experience than if you built a gaming PC with it just a standard Intel CPU and an NVIDIA graphics card, which would be, at least in past generations, the default that you would expect to build for a gaming PC. Nowadays, maybe an AMD Ryzen chip, a desktop Ryzen chip, is more of the default for building a gaming PC, but a desktop Ryzen chip is almost going to be completely different from a mobile Ryzen chip. It is also worth pointing out that Video Games Chronicle is already getting the name wrong. It is the ROG First Xbox Ally, not the Xbox ROG Ally. Although maybe by the time it launches, it will be the Xbox ROG Ally, which would kind of make more sense because there's just going to be an assumption that Xbox is going to be at the front of other devices' names. And yeah, we have no clue as far as how much it's going to cost, but the guess here is that the cheaper mobile version, which is only going to be slightly better than a Steam Deck hardware-wise and maybe worse than a Steam Deck software-wise, same is true for the premium model, and maybe worse software-wise, is guessed to be 600 euros, whereas the version you really would want to buy is estimated to be 900 euros, which is effectively 3 times the cost of the refurb Steam Deck I just got. So, yeah, that's going to require a lot of reviews and thinking before most people would consider buying something like this. Sorry. I definitely think I want to buy a different microphone at some point if I could ever find one on sale that's a cardioid, I think is what the word is, cathode microphone, something that's less omnidirectional, condenser microphones like my Blue Yeti has. There's nothing wrong with my Blue Yeti, I've had it for years, but it is picking up, it has always picked up a lot of the air conditioner sounds and keyboard and mouse stuff, so potentially even a shotgun mic I think I would appreciate more. Fatal Fury City Cry of the Wolves DLC character Andy Bogard launches June 24th according to Nikamatsu. Then this would be Fatal Fury on Steam, which, yeah, I imagine there is some tag here that's probably inaccurate. Nudity. Yeah, I bet there is actually no nudity in this game. These tag systems need to be improved quite a bit. Like, there isn't even the adult content disclaimer here. It feels like what should happen is that anytime you're tagged with nudity, hentai, sexual content, NSFW in particular, there should be an email to the publisher and developer saying, hey, are these tags accurate? If so, we need you to write a short paragraph here completely describing the content in your game so that we can better serve our customers. Let's see, Gaming on Linux says Wine 10.10 brings more media foundation work, Mono and Unicode updates. Mono was the Microsoft project that they abandoned and made open source compatibility layer with .NET code. Unicode is emojis. I don't know what media foundation work is. Let's see. OS Mesa library is no longer needed. More support for generating Windows runtime metadata and WIDL. I'm not sure what that actually stands for. Local data updated to support Unicode CLDR47. And then P010 format support from Media Foundation. That I would assume is some kind of video or audio format. Bug fixes are noted for Rise of Nations, Grade, Steam in general, Horizon, Chase, Fear Stalker, Anomaly, Edor, Masters of a Broken World, StarCraft Remaster, the Fidelio Incident, Vampire, and more. So yeah, Wine is continuing to improve. Let's see. Recycling bin has been added to VisualBasic.net class libraries. Most of this is too technical for me, but interesting and always nice to see improvements. And it's nice to see that the improvements happen pretty quickly. Take-Two Interactive has extended its partnership with the NBA, the NBPA, the WNBA, and the WNBPA. What are the PAs? Women's National Basketball Association is WNBA. You would think the P would be professional, but the NBA is professional. Is this a lower league for the college students? Players Association. Okay. So, the National Basketball Association, I think, is probably the people who run the NBA and the rich people, whereas the Players Association might be closer to a union, trying to support the players somewhat. So while you have 4 different entities, they all seem to be lockstepping with Take-Two to continue to make these sports games, which sell like hotcakes and don't require much work. Maybe they do require a lot of work, but they don't feel like they get much better year to year. Let me just say that. We'll make a YouTube short on this game. Let's see. Summer Games Fest reported the highest ever viewership. Viewer numbers were up 89% year on year. This is Video Games Chronicle claiming that. It's believable, I suppose. Somewhat. The numbers seem a little high there, but it's not like a lot of people had a lot else to do. It'll be interesting to see if that translates into actual sales, though, which I question if it actually will. Remember, Summer Games Fest is always just trying to replace other events like E3. So as people realize E3 is not coming back, their only real option is to either watch Summer Games Fest or not watch anything at all. This looks intriguing. Apparently I've already seen it. Robots at Midnight. You know, this we've obviously already seen. Yeah. And this one. And this one. In a weird way, it's almost like my checkboxes are working too well now, in that I am ending up closing a lot of games that I wouldn't have opened before. And it's not perhaps so much my macros that are to blame here. Action Game Maker. There's one thing, certainly, as I was playing Emulator of Dreams, as far as just like, how would you make a point-and-click adventure game without some kind of special engine? I don't think Godot, you could definitely do it in other game engines like Godot, certainly, but I don't think I know of a plugin that would make it easy to do it. Yeah, I think you would end up having to manipulate a 2D platforming game closer to this to become a hidden object game. Or it's very possible that there is already a bespoke hidden object game engine where all you have to do is upload a Photoshop file with many layers to have the hidden object elements work. Gaming Online says Proton Experimental gets fixes for Warframe, Enshrouded, Crysis 2 Remastered, OpenVR, and more. I'm certainly wondering whether I want to stay in SteamOS beta at this point or not. I probably do, just because I always want to experiment and be ahead of the curve, but I question whether SteamOS's betas are going to end up adding too much in the long run. Yeah, it does just seem like there's a decent chance that SteamOS version 3 at least is hitting a point of being rock solid, and then version 4.0 may come out and it may be the even slightly more rock solid version, and then it will potentially be a long while before they start throwing in a whole bunch of new things. Recreating Tony Hawk Pro Skater's 3+4 Senses of Freedom and Fantasy is the headline from GameDeveloper.com. Looks like this might be one of their longer interviews. And does this look like something that we want to make a YouTube short? This is just too bouncy around artificial intelligence, artificial affection, another Japanese only visual novel. Tenshi no Uta Shiro Tsubasa no Inori for Switch launches September 18th in Japan, and English release is also planned. What does Uta mean? Yeah, Tenshi is a name, no is the word the. So, is that goddess? So it's from 2018 originally. I would think it is probably a goddess. Otome visual novel, if I was to guess. Let's see. Heroes of Might and Magic 2 open source game engine F Heroes 2 version 1.1.9 has been released. Which, yeah. improving spell animations and adjusting the scouting area to match the original game. Many rendering issues in battles and on adventure map were also fixed for a better gameplay experience. So yeah, this might be the better way to play Heroes of Might and Magic 2. Unfortunately, you're just not going to get these kinds of projects for every single game. And having to know about these projects and install these projects is a bit more of a hassle. Right. So this game is called Witch of Eclipse. And it is tagged with sexual content, and it does have some anime girls with big boobs showing that I could show it, but I will go ahead and not bother to. It does look like it's probably an RPG Maker game with adult content implied, potentially patched out for the Steam version and then patched back in if you find the patch. John Marston's actor teases exciting news for Red Dead fans as the Switch 2 rumors swell. A current generation version of Red Dead Revolution 2 is reportedly in development. Red Dead Redemption 2, I guess. Yeah. That's the Red Dead game I think people actually liked. The first game, Red Dead Revolver, nobody remembers. Red Dead Redemption 1, I think, is actually the game people liked. And then 2 is fine, but nobody loved it as much because there was a bunch of online nonsense added to it. And perhaps by the time Red Dead Redemption 2 came out, it really showed that there's just not a big enough audience for even one major cowboy type game. Speaking of not having a big audience, I watched a movie, I think it's Onyx the Fortuitous and the versus the something. Yeah. Onyx the Fortuitous is this YouTube content creator from many years ago who created this character of a edgelord kind of devil worshipping weirdo character, and he became somewhat popular by getting on local news reports and being a weirdo, which his weirdo-ness gets bounced out because there's like 4 other characters in the movie, and it makes it feel a little bit more like an Elvira movie, in the sense that I don't think Elvira herself actually can go the full length of a movie just as one character. It'd be hard for any character really to be the main protagonist in a movie that is such a weird character. So it works fine enough as a movie, worth watching once, but you kind of have to know the character and the character's origins, and not just think that he is just actually a weirdo character. And even at that, I don't think you could ever have a sequel, or you could ever make another movie. It is something slightly above, I guess, what the not Angry Video Game Nerd, but the Nostalgia Critics movies were, which I think those are probably way worse. But yeah, it's on Prime Video, so it's free, so just wasted some time. Which isn't free, really, in the long run. You have to really realize that, too. Apparently a game called Drapeline launches in early access on June 20th, according to Gamatsu. Raise the strongest dragon girl. So it's a dragon girl raising simulator. That's an interesting thought. But the interface here is all in Japanese and doesn't really give me a great idea of what your main gameplay screen is going to be. It's probably this. It'll be interesting to see how the reviews go for this, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're pretty low. Even the Princess Maker series of games are rated pretty low. I think part of the problem certainly is that the games themselves, while intriguing, are just not an interesting gameplay mechanic. And there may just not be a way of getting around that. Magical Animal Farm looks like garbage. Video Games Chronicles says getting this Witcher 4 to run on 60 frames per second on the Xbox Series S will be extremely challenging, says CD Projekt Red. Which this is definitely CD Projekt Red pushing for what I imagine a lot of publishers and developers are pushing for, which is the breaking of consistent support for the Series S models of the Xbox. Whereas Microsoft doesn't want that to happen because they want to sell the cheaper Series S without the disk drives and sell digital copies. So they are effectively at odds. And yes, Witcher 4, as it's being shown in these fake tech demos, which I definitely would lean to calling them fake, is going to struggle to run on consoles in general, I think. Of course, there is definitely an argument being made these days that 60 frames per second is not particularly necessary if you can give somebody a consistent 30 or a consistent 50 even. Legend of Bubble Boy looks like nothing. Donkey Kong Bonanza Direct has been set for June 18th. 15 minutes of information for the upcoming Switch 2 game. This is where Nintendo has to continue to double down and try and keep people's attention. There have been cases in the past where the launch week sales for the hardware of a new Nintendo console were high, but then the overall sales for lifetime end up disappointing. I wouldn't be surprised even if the Virtual Boy sold particularly well in that first week just on the gimmick of it. Let's see. ScumVM has announced support for another game, Another World, also known as Out of This World. Increasingly, if you give the ScumVM team enough resources and time, they will probably end up supporting almost every old game, because I think for the most part every old game now is just being emulated as a DOS or Windows 3.1 game anyways, and so there may not be that many tweaks you even really need to do. I've always wanted to cover and play Another World, but I also know it's a game that I probably would just do a spotlight on and never actually finish. It's kind of difficult, even with a walkthrough. The controls and the tight jumping on Another World is going to make the game very difficult. Balloon Party being tagged as a hidden object game. It looks to me like it is a garbage game. Let's see. PlayStation has removed the PC region locks for Helldivers 2, The Last of Us Part 2, and more. Most PlayStation PC titles were previously unavailable in regions without PlayStation Network. I guess the question now is, can you log in and play the games without PlayStation Network being available in your country? Or are they just removing the region locks on Steam and expecting people to VPN? Let's see. Yeah. seems like PlayStation is going to slowly acquiesce to consumer demand at this rate, but it may take a while. And I wouldn't be surprised if PlayStation at this point doesn't really care about PlayStation Network stuff. Escape Z. Looks like it could be something. Let's see. And then we talked already about Borderlands 4 pre-orders now available. Post-launch content detailed, story missions, and new Vault Hunters. This is from Gamatsu. And it's basically same stuff we looked at, so we'll skip that. And then here we have Gaming on Linux saying the same thing. Sony removed the purchase restrictions for multiple major PC games. The question still is going to be per game, how many of them still require a PlayStation Network account? Which is something I imagine a lot of people on Steam don't want to have to go and create. Let's see. Nintendo Switch 2 set an all-time launch record for hardware in the US, beating the PS4. This is Video Games Chronicles. Yes, we know the hardware sold well. And we'll leave it at that. I did hear a rumor that some of the Mario Kart bundles were selling out in Japan, and so they were basically selling the versions of Mario Kart that was just the code in the box. Like, they were selling that model to people, and then people were getting home and opening the packaging and finding that there actually was a cartridge in the box, is I believe the story, the rumor I had heard. Honestly, it feels like it would be the opposite direction, that they would sell out on the Switch cartridge versions, and then they would be slapping stickers on the cases of the ones with codes in the boxes, or just printing out new codes. It is kind of crazy that they just can't, from a storefront, print out new codes. Yeah. It is kind of crazy that there isn't just like an online store specifically for resellers where they can immediately purchase and print codes out, although the printing wouldn't look particularly good if you're just printing it out on a piece of paper. Yeah. I definitely would think that there's a different way in which you could be doing codes and boxes. Though, and if I was making a new console, I definitely would see if I could partner up with a payment processor, or see if I could be acquired by a payment processor to say, hey, we're going to have this video game console and games are going to just be codes always. And so stores can just instantly print out the codes per sale. They don't have to worry about extra inventory or shelf space. I think stores might love that. Anyways, I don't want to ramble on too much today. This is going to potentially be a long one. Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled sales have topped 10 million, a new milestone achieved 6 years after release. Which I guess good for it that it's hit a round number, but 6 years after release isn't, I think, an amazing thing. Although, weirdly, it is not on PC, so 10 million sales while not being on PC is kind of surprising. Rematch gets rated Steam Deck and SteamOS playable ahead of release. Rematch being a football/soccer game. Here we can see it's already rated mostly positive with people who have advanced access by 75%, mostly positive. Journey through shadow to reach light. Yeah, it doesn't quite good enough. Flying Bird instead of Flappy Bird. Well, 99 cents to have a Flappy Bird clone on Steam. No, I don't think that's something I really would want to promote. Entropy Center looks like it might be something of interest. It is also from 2022, so I'm not sure why I'm seeing it again. The Star Named EOS from 2024. It's rated very positively. 2. Behind the Frame, the Finest Scenery. Overwhelmingly positive from 2021. I guess it is kind of nice if this was a separate thing where this would highlight old games. And see, all of those links weirdly still on the left side of the article when they should be on the right side. Something is weird has happened there. The Puzzle Piazza Humble Bundle has 8 quality games for cheaps. Yeah. I don't think I would own any of those games, so if I had extra cash, it'd probably be a good bundle to think about. Guidebook of Babel. Yeah. King's Grave. It's from 2024. Is it the kind of game I would want to play? You know what, I'm going to put it on the fall list and deal with it later. Which means at some point I will have to actually deal with it. Homebody. It's already on the wish list. Primal Glade. That looks like a new one. Rhythm Town Music Visualizer. Doesn't look good enough. Away Team, Oxygen not included. I didn't like the previous Oxygen not included, but I will make a YouTube short on it because I know other people did. Clay Entertainment announces Away Team and new Oxygen not included adventure. This is from Gaming on Linux. So, okay. Maze Lovers Memorial. This doesn't look like anything. 80 physics-based puzzles based on an atmospheric thing. Well, I'm intrigued on that. I bet it's nothing, but I'll give it a chance. Another Legacy of Kain game is seemingly coming to the PS5 soon. More Legacy of Kain games are seemingly coming to the PS5 Classics catalog. I think particularly for the Legacy of Kain series, though, there needs to be a full reboot. And I'm not sure anybody has the rights to it or the funding to do a full reboot. Bollock's Pit is a delicious challenge according to Gaming on Linux. Looks like this is a ball pit, what is that called? Arkanoid clone? Yeah. Yeah. Let's see, we saw this June 11th. Don't care about hidden cats at this point. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says Pokemon North America International Championship winners were crowned ahead of the Pokemon Worlds in August. Pokemon's biggest show of the year is set for August. You can see how most of these Pokemon players are adults, or at least presenting as adults in their age. Not seeing any kids really make it to this level, which I can't really blame people for wanting to play Pokemon over something more complicated like Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh! those games have gotten just incredibly complicated, where Pokemon is still relatively new compared to those two games and more manageable. Yeah, as I scan the large amount of tables here, there's a lot of people wearing blue for some reason, and I don't see anybody that looks like a kid. Well, maybe that's a kid there. And at a certain point I wonder if you can see all the names. I wonder if it isn't really a case where Pokemon the card game is just more popular amongst adults. It probably isn't. It's probably only at the professional level. And I would imagine you'd have even older, more geekier looking people if you went to a Magic the Gathering Magic the Gathering tournament or Yu-Gi-Oh tournament. Alright, Gaming on Linux says Nexus Mods is under new ownership. Robin Dark One Scott has announced that Nexus Mod is going through a change with new owners. Scott has been running Nexus Mod since its inception in 2001, with the site taking up their entire adult life. Running such a big thing by yourself can certainly take a toll. I can certainly understand it, although Nexus Mods nowadays is much more than just Scott with a whole team behind it. So, okay, he's sold out. I think he's claiming he's stepping down and selling the place to take care of himself. There have been some controversies around Nexus Mods, in that Nexus Mods was getting, frankly, a little political in a way to counter political style mods that were being put on Nexus Mods. More specifically, to explain, there was a lot of anti-woke, anti-DEI type mods that would, or mods that you could at least describe that way, that are getting put on Nexus Mods. And Nexus Mods was trying to, in the past, have codes of conduct or rules that was banning mods that people actually wanted because they were changing things. This goes back a long time to mods that would have changed, like the appearance of Aloy in Horizon Zero Dawn, and the face models and appearance of characters in Last of Us Part 2. It doesn't go back so far as trying to ban any mods that would have changed characters in like Skyrim, but then more recently the mods have gotten a little bit more aggressive too, and just more blatant about what their intention is and what the outcome is going to be, which for the people that want that, they might as well be allowed it. Mods that would inherently like change games that say body type 1 versus body type 2, which I heard that yet another game is using that terminology. Weirdly, it seems like Japanese game developers are using that terminology instead of male and female body types. Removing gay romance options that might be in a game, although I don't think there are too many games that actually force any gay romance options. I'm thinking Baldur's Gate had those options, and there's probably a mod to remove that. There's undoubtedly mods out there that put like MAGA hats on characters and things like that. There's probably some mods that change non-white, blonde, blue-eyed characters into blonde, blue-eyed characters. And yep, it definitely, I think, has become more of a Streisand effect, where Nexus Mod should just say, hey, we just let any mod that doesn't put a virus on people's computers go, and then let the market decide as far as how many people want that mod versus how many people don't. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see who the new ownership is. around Nexus mods, but it's probably not a good thing overall, because with new ownership there's going to be a new desire to be more mainstream, which mods inherently aren't mainstream, and there's going to be a desire to monetize, almost certainly. So I can't imagine this is going to go well for people who use Nexus mods quite a bit, although I'm not sure you need to use the Nexus mods, but it will be harder certainly for mod fans to find mods overall. Yeah, now I've got to really think about a better system here. Like this one, which was tagged somehow, is just Shadowverse Worlds Beyond. And we can see that it's 75% positive. What is the... yeah, sexual content is the tag. Maybe if I just got rid of that one tag, I'd have less of this. But maybe I should just act in caution and keep it. But yeah. I guess the game is available now. And people, I guess, are having a fine time. It's probably a great time to release a new game. Sorry, not showing it, am I? Because, yeah, with summer happening, getting into this game and making it your daily ritual is going to lock people into doing the dailies and playing a game like this way better than if you tried to release this right as school was starting back up, which I say school, but school in my case, and what I'm saying is, yeah, even adults often have slightly different schedules in the summer than they do in when the school seasons start back up. And also it's hot in the summer usually for most people on the planet, so going out and doing other activities is less common, so you tend to have a little bit more free time. Do I want to make a YouTube short on this? No, I already have. Let's see, the composer says that Kojima changed Death Stranding 2 because it wasn't polarizing enough. If everyone likes it, it's mainstream, Kojima told this Death Stranding 2 composer Woodkid. Yeah, that's a dangerous way of thinking, certainly. And it's probably reflected in the weird gameplay mechanics of Death Stranding 1 and what seemed to be the same gameplay mechanics of Death Stranding 2. I would much prefer him to say I had an artistic vision and I was able to fulfill it, not I didn't find the game irritating enough people or polarizing enough, therefore I made changes to my artistic vision just so I wasn't mainstream. That is very much kind of an edgelord movie maker's mentality, wannabe movie maker. But yeah, that's definitely how I think of Kojima, is that he is just this wannabe movie maker that is way too old to be a wannabe movie maker. Let's see. Gaming on Linux says that the Minecraft Java edition is going through quite an overhaul for the upcoming Vibrant Visuals update. Mojang have given an update on the upcoming Vibrant Visuals update that brings many visual enhancements to Minecraft. The update is initially rolling out for the Minecraft Bedrock edition, but work is ongoing for the Java version. Various visuals like new lighting, fog, shadows, and that move with the sun, enhanced water rendering with reflections, and much more. Fair amount of the changes are a little subtle, but all added together, Minecraft will look a lot more modern and fancy, which may be a mistake, frankly. So yeah, if they're doing a major overhaul on the Java edition, this potentially would be a great time to think about releasing it on Steam. They're separating the gameplay code from the rendering code and bringing the latter up to date with more modern approaches to rendering. Let's see. The fact that it's still running on Java is actually a big problem. I think that they're gonna have to adjust. At some point, Minecraft Java Edition is just gonna stop needing to run on Java at all, and it's gonna just be code that is hard-coded in assembly language to run without needing a Java library to interpret its code. If you're changing the rendering pipelines in one update, you've done probably more than half of the game as far as remaking it from scratch. And they may very well just ship of Theseus, the Minecraft Java Edition, slowly changing part and then changing the other part. So let's look at this video. This is a 5-minute video. So the danger is if it is not gonna feel like the same game, then that nostalgia is gonna go away. If Minecraft fans wanted games to be way better looking or different looking, they would just play a different game. And a lot of this, though, isn't really different from mods you could have already installed on Minecraft. So let's see. Let's jump around a little bit and see if there's anything that jumps out particularly visually. I hate these kind of like talk to the screen videos where it's way more talking than showing. It honestly doesn't seem like it's changing too much. It's kind of interesting how Minecraft has just maintained popularity. I think it is just a lot of content creators like Captain Sparkles covered the heck out of it, and it just created its own momentum and has a big fandom, but it definitely isn't a point right now where I would want to go back and play Minecraft for any reason. Like, I don't think they've added enough new redstone or characters or challenges or achievements to make it feel like I would be doing anything too new. And it definitely is a case that the majority of the fandom of Minecraft is people, kids, who don't have access to other games. And so they're just playing the heck out of the one game they did have access to. Undesired catch. Alright, we'll make a YouTube short on that. Let's see. It's been confirmed that a Donkey Kong Direct is coming this week, focusing on Donkey Kong Bonanza. Donkey Kong comes to Nintendo Switch 2 in July. I guess the assumption it would only be Donkey Kong Direct Bonanza that they were talking about, but I guess it would be intriguing if they announced some other Donkey Kong game. It wouldn't be the worst idea if they announced a remake of the original Donkey Kong game and just said, hey, we're going to give this away to everybody who buys Donkey Kong Bonanza, and it's going to be on sale for cheap on the eShop, or even nicer, we're giving it away to everybody who owns a Switch and has bought a Switch at this point. You can't really sell the original Donkey Kong game again, but you could try to make a sequel, a secret sequel in development, but even that would be very difficult. It is kind of crazy with the whole King of Kong popularity that at no point did Nintendo try to make a new Donkey Kong arcade game that played slightly different and that would potentially tease those players in King of Kong to try and go for a new record, playing a new Donkey Kong game. That would be really shocking. More realistically, the expectations and hopes would be around Donkey Kong Country remakes or re-releases or coming out, which that would be nice too. In fact, more people are interested in Donkey Kong Country, almost certainly, than a Donkey Kong arcade sequel, which would be already Donkey Kong Jr., so it would have to be Donkey Kong 4, would actually have to be the name of it, because there was a Donkey Kong 3 that didn't even have Jumpman/Mario in it. Is Video Games Chronicle saying Borderlands 4 won't cost $80 after all. Gearbox confirmed $70 price point following CEO's comments about Hill fans finding a way. Which, yeah. I don't think Take-Two wants Randy Pitchford to be the CEO of Gearbox. I don't think Gearbox wants him to be the CEO, and I don't think he wants to be the CEO. The only problem is nobody has a big enough truckload of cash to back up to his driveway to buy Gearbox. Which, instead of the diamond hands on Reddit trying to hold forever on GameStop stocks, it would have been nice if there had been a similar movement where GameStop people found some way to form a coalition, an alliance, an investment firm of some sort to buy Gearbox. But I mean, that would take a lot of money and a lot of work. Although inherently, that probably would be the best way for video game fans who happen to have a lot of money to influence things. We already see like Saudi Arabian public interest funds doing similar things, so it wouldn't be crazy for gamers' public interest funds of American gamers or worldwide gamer public interest funds buying companies, investing in companies, being shareholders, being activist investors in a lot of ways, I guess, too. It's another platforming game. We haven't seen one of those in a while. Yeah, being activist investors to just try and have the company be in good hands and not led by the wrong person. Of course, how do you find the right person is always a good question too. Yeah. I definitely recognized last night, as we're going later into the evening this night, that I was staying up too late, later than I wanted to. And yeah, my whole sleep schedule, once again, is all over the place. Let's see, is this a game? I'll make a YouTube short on that, I guess. Electoral Carnage. Looks like it's probably too political. Music at the End of the World. Might be an interesting thing. It's free also. So yeah, it's still very much in the case where I want to make sure free games are reviewed well, because I don't want to add a bunch of games to my library that are just terribly reviewed free games, which that could easily happen. Here we have something called Chinese Style School, which is obviously an asset flip game and looks, what I suspect, nothing like what a Chinese Style School would look like, at least for this main protagonist. But yeah, I don't know what a Chinese Style School would look like, and I wouldn't be surprised if they look severely different based on what region you're in. Idle Streaming Bonanza, that's gonna be a no. Fallen Arena, yeah, there might be something there. Star Aquarium is a desktop toy, and I guess I am actively rejecting anything that is a desktop toy at this point. You see, this game is tagged with adult content. I don't know why. Or it's tagged with something, and it's called Con Fishing, and we can see it's mixed reviews. Hentai is the tag on it, and I think that's probably wrong. The tagging system on Steam seems to be abused quite a bit. I would have to assume by the publishers and developers of games, because these games are barely out. Let's see, Replicomica might be something. Sect accepts female disciples only. Looks like nothing. Money theft, 2 heist. Wow, we're kind of getting back to some older days of like garbage games showing up on Steam. It feels like it's been a while since we've had that happen. I don't know if something has changed, or if now that Summer Games Fest is over, now the garbage asset flipping trolls that put games on Steam are back. Give that a chance. Path to Serenity. Graduation game. Doesn't look like anything. That looks terrible. I wonder if that is the reason why there is almost always a sale going on these days too, is that there's just this push to promote something over nothing games. Which, yeah, that might make some sense as far as just slowly shift all of your audience one way or the other way. Gex Trilogy seems like it's almost out. And it looks like we're just looking at games on Steam now, so it does seem like we can assume that we are finally through all the news, and hope that we are through all the news. I'm being kind of flippant on that and not really double checking to make sure that all the news is getting covered in the past couple streams, but I will also say it's not like I'm seeing other news announcements happen, so it doesn't feel like too much is being missed. And yeah. These little games are still, or these wrongly tagged games, still going to be an issue, certainly. Might as well close them, I think. But then there's something weird happening too, in that twice now we found a game that has labeled itself as having adult content, but it doesn't seem to me like it does have that tag. This just looks like a regular fishing game. Doesn't look good, so I'm not gonna make a YouTube short on it. So I have no idea what's going on there. And that's a bad situation to be. Certainly, I need to be able to understand why something would be breaking, or I'm just going to be in a terrible position where I just have to assume that something is breaking. Yeah, we can definitely see that there is a lot of fishing games, but I'm not sure if the fishing games are going to, in a kind of quick manner, push out the other kinds of games. The garbage games. Assuming the fishing games are even good. Let's see. I guess I'm still fairly happy with my level of curation. Perhaps I should be even more cruel, because I still have plenty of games I have been playing lately that even meeting my low standards are not really good enough for me to want to really play them, and honestly I would prefer to play good games. I'm still not really 100% sure what the fandom of hidden object games is. Like, I think it's old ladies, if I was to guess, or old men, people who want things very slow and simplistic, and probably enjoy hidden object pictures and books, or enjoyed those in their past. So digital forms may just be the evolution of that. But yeah. Alright, well, I do believe, let me just double check, that is that. We never even got into Yu-Gi-Oh! And we never even took a bathroom break, and we went for 3 hours. So, I guess I did fairly well today. Alright, well, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe,